It was exactly 1 week ago when I posted my first impressions video of the Pocophone F1 after using it for about 5 hours or so, and already then I told you that I can wholeheartedly recommend it if nothing bigger comes up. Now what I could do in this review, kind of make it mysterious and ask you if that big thing has happened that changed my mind. But then again, that would mean that my first impressions would have been wrong, that they sucked, and I can confidently say they pretty much never do. They are very spot on. And it is still the case, even though, yes, I have read all the comments, I've read all the questions, and I will answer most of those also later on where usually the conclusion is. But still, if none of those compromises for this obviously non-perfect phone worry you, I can still tell you that this is one of the best phones that you can get. But there is a lot more to talk about, and of course, a few things will be repetitive if you've seen the preview, but for the full review, we need to cover a few like for example now, the design. I still like it a lot, especially also the build quality, because people said it's plastic, it can't be premium, it can't be a flagship. Now what I'm going to tell you right now is this. If someone makes a plastic phone like this, that feels so solid, so well built, doesn't creak at all, with buttons that don't wiggle at all, and have a nice tactile bump, a nice tactile feedback, with these curves, where also the design comes in, because this phone, because it's actually, as you can see here, smaller, but mostly narrower than a OnePlus 5T, even though it's thicker because of the bigger battery, is easier to handle than most other phones, especially the wider ones like the OnePlus 5T or the 6. This sits well in the hand due to the curves. It's mostly grippy, even though I've said it, they could have made it a little bit more grippier, the plastic, but it doesn't attract fingerprints. And since it is plastic, you can sometimes drop it and maybe nothing bigger will happen, but it obviously can. But the chances are definitely way better that it won't, like for example a glass phone or maybe an aluminum phone that will dent. So from my standpoint, this is absolutely super well executed. And just because of the plastic, I won't notch it or take off a score or more like that, because it feels still great. Now the fingerprint reader, also one of the best you can get on the market. It's super fast, it's super accurate, and it has, like I said already, face unlock. Now a few people have asked why the thing is the case that you have to kind of change the region. Now let me get into what I mean. Here in the region, for example, you have to change to India. And people have asked me why this is not available if you use it in other country. From what I heard, but I'm not sure if that's true, it's a kind of region exclusive thing. So just change the region. I didn't really see any bigger impact of that or anything at all. So just use it and you get a face unlock that works so well, especially even in darks. Yeah, absolutely top. Otherwise, what else is there to say when it comes to this? We went already around the last time, but the camera, as you can see, just a slight protrusion. There is also a case actually that absolutely works. I don't have it here right now though. Then we have the headphone jack, the microphone, SD card, yes, available as well, and the SIM card. Then we have USB Type-C, the speaker that works with the earpiece. Then obviously here a microphone, the buttons. I like the position just great. And now people might ask how I can possibly give this phone 4.5 stars in terms of design. Now my reason is the following. First of all, it feels so good in the hand and it's easier usable than maybe some other phones. The notch compared to the Mi 8 isn't as visible because it cuts off exactly where it has to do. And because as you can see, if I unhide it, it just cuts off as much as it needs to. And therefore it's not an obstruction. Yes, I've talked about a few things, like for example, if you use it in full screen, your video will actually have this smaller curve and then this bigger curve on the downside. So that's a little bit something odd, but otherwise I can get away with that absolutely without any problems. The bezels on the sides aren't too big. Yes, the one on the bottom, people have an issue with the chin. I don't see this as an issue. Yeah. Not sure what else I was gonna say. The LED is at the bottom, it's a small white one. Not sure why they didn't do something bigger. I've said if you want to see it, just check the preview. But other than that, the sensors are still there. And talking about that notch that I've already mentioned, you can hide it or you can't, because people have asked why I didn't have a notch. Yeah, that's what it is, because it pretty much doesn't obstruct you. Now, the one thing that I've complained about and will still mention is that we don't have any notification icons. They said though, and I will get into this a little bit later as well, that in a future update they actually want to include those notification icons in some way. Not quite sure how exactly that's going to happen, but if they actually pull this off, it would actually help a lot and it would improve the design overall even more so than it is. Now, what someone asked me, for example, I said that the front is flat and he said maybe the screen protectors now will fit exactly to the front. Well, it's not perfectly flat. There is a little bit of a tiny curve, so I'm not quite sure how this works with screen protectors because of this small little curve, but I think it should be quite okay. Now the display is also quite okay still, at least, because people have complained about when I said it's a maximum of 420 lux, which is, by the way, not the same as nits, but the calibration is absolutely fine. And yes, obviously it doesn't have quite the contrast, it doesn't have quite the blacks as an AMOLED display. And I'm just saying this, if they would have pulled off the same display like on the Mi 8, I think this would have been my new daily driver, because the display is the weakest point here, because it's a little bit flat. But when I say a little bit, it's really just a little bit. Like I said before, 20, not the brightest one. But in normal daily use, the brightness was totally enough. The colors were nice. The maximum brightness for me was also good. Viewing angles. There is not really any bigger compromise besides that it's just not as bright in case you need that. And then obviously the notch and so on. But in normal daily use, I've used this for a week and I never really had an issue with the display. Obviously it wasn't a display that impressed me where I said, wow, it's amazing. But it totally got the job done without ever thinking, it's not good enough. That's definitely something you have to decide if you want the best possible display. I also think you won't get a $300 phone. But let's get into the speaker again. I'm just gonna say the same as in the preview. This speaker is really, really good. It's loud, absolutely loud enough, actually louder than some others one. It has a dual speaker arrangement, it sounds nice, full and warm. Yes, it distorts a little bit, but overall the experience was so nice, especially watching YouTube videos on these, as long as you obviously don't disturb anyone. This is a super nice speaker system, as well as the headphone jack. It's very loud, it has the options in the settings to adjust it with equalizer and so on. Good quality. It's a little bit on the warmer side, a little bit on the bassier side by default, but you can change it. But yeah, also this is great. And yeah, I'm not gonna change my mind definitely when it comes to the performance, because even though it actually got an update, it should have improved it. I'm not really sure how that would be possible, because it runs flawless. It runs just as good as the best Snapdragon 845 phones out there. It is smooth. There is no lag. The scrolling seems ever so slightly different, but I'm just gonna mention it because I'm a stickler when it comes to the scrolling. It feels ever so slightly slower, or maybe a little bit less drag, but super nice job. And someone wanted to see how quickly it refreshes, for example. So as you can see, a buttery smooth multitasking. It never bogs down. It's consistent with 6 GB of RAM. It's future-proof. This phone is absolutely killer when it comes to the performance. When it comes to games, due to the plastic back, it also can get a little bit warmer than other ones before it throttles, so that's a plus in my book. So even for gaming, it's one of the best ones out there. Now when it comes to the battery life, 4000 milliamp hours have to be charged, and in 1 hour 50 that's actually fine, even though for like the last few percent it took a little bit longer, so you are at like I think 97% after 1 hour and 40, and 1 hour and 40 is the time that, for example, a Samsung Galaxy Note 9 takes for the 4000 milliamp, so even it charges quick. Now battery life, since I didn't really get into that in the preview or in the first impression, since I couldn't, now I can, and I will give you as much information as possible for you to kind of get what you need, even though it's harder to judge or evaluate the battery life on a phone that just holds that long. Now 7% for 1 hour of YouTube. With the Note 9, with the new testing that I'm doing, it's pretty much the best value. I had 6% once before, but that was with 720p. Now all my tests have been done for like over half a year with 1080p, so the best value that you can get. Now, on one day, if I kinda try to get the value for 1 day in terms of Wi-Fi use, I would end up at like 12 to 13 hours. If it would be mobile data, I would say at least like 8 hours, maybe even more. It really comes down to your use. On 2 days though, which is more realistic, because for me that would be a 2-day phone, I would expect to get something like 7 hours on mobile data and still like 10 hours on Wi-Fi. Standby drain is typical for any Android phone, but since it has 4000 milliamps, this is still compared less because it has just more for that. But still, if the standby drain would be on kind of iOS-like level, this phone would be even 3 days for me, because that's still the one thing. But this phone, and this is the big advantage, and this is the main selling point actually in my book, the battery life. It's the battery life. Okay, let's get into the software. Now I gave MIUI 3.5 stars, but I'm actually gonna give this 4 stars because they made a few improvements that I just prefer over MIUI. First of all, we have an app drawer. Not a big thing for me since I would use Nova Launcher anyways, but it has categories, as you can see here, and actually makes this on its own. And it's kinda okay. We have the same thing from MIUI. I'm not quite sure if it's really helpful. We have just the quick settings layout that I think is a little bit more appealing in terms of looks than The settings are pretty much the same as on any MIUI phone, but just let's quickly get through them. You have quick ball. You have button gestures. Like for example, if the screen is off, you can turn on the flashlight and similar stuff. You can see them here. Take a screenshot, turn off the screen, torch, and so on and so forth. Notification light, yes, it's still there, even though it's very small. Headphone options, one-handed mode is obviously there. Then full screen display, you can get rid of the buttons here and then use the full screen gestures. And someone asked me if we can actually light up those pixels to get this kind of curve more towards this. This is not possible. This is fully lit up. If you use it in full screen mode in a movie, you will just have a smaller curve here and a bigger one here. That's something I got used to after a while. It still looks odd, but if you don't really concern too much about it, it's fine. Then we can see the rest here, connection speed and so on. But what I wanted to get into, since we're already talking about the software, here is something that was posted, what they are working on in terms of improving the system even more so, because white wine L1 support for Netflix, because it doesn't support Netflix as it is right now in HD. Obviously YouTube, because some people were worrying about that. YouTube and everything works in 1080p, but the problem is that Netflix and Prime, Amazon Prime don't work in HD. They are saying, still investigating. Now, my assumption is that it won't work without actually shipping the phone in, because on the OnePlus 5T it was the same issue. You would have gotten L1 support if they would have changed something internally. So I would say this is not gonna happen. For example, the media pad from Huawei did actually get it done, but maybe they had some different hardware. Now, also, Asphalt 9 isn't compatible. They fixed that, yes, and it works. Cannot zoom feature for YouTube, fixed now because it has full screen. Status bar, no battery percentage in progress. This would be nice if I would have the battery percentage here. It's not yet, still it will come. Just as, for example, also status bar, no notification, app icons. If they manage to do battery percentage and the icons, this, believe me, in actually normal use is already a big improvement. No network speed is not a huge thing. Hide notch display feature. UI complaint, not quite sure what they mean, maybe because of the curve here, would be nice. Then support for 4K 60 on the back camera, it's not still a thing, and they are still saying investigating. Now the thing is, the chip can it, but the issue is that MIUI's camera software just never supported 60 frames, so they would have majorly have to redo that, and I don't think that's gonna happen. Then okay, Google is not working, in case that's a big thing, and the PUBG mobile issues, but that will all be fixed. But just so we've covered that, and for people who have asked how's the software support, they provide usually, and I don't think on the Pocophone it will be different than MIUI phones as well, long support. And we've actually seen a Android Pie version on some phones already appearing as a beta, so maybe it's even closer than we might think. But in general, I actually like this one more than I should, just because I didn't like MIUI so much more. The small little changes actually, and if those improvements come, will make it even better. Now, I'm not going into the main camera app, and people have asked if there is Camera 2 API support. I'll answer those questions later, but let's get actually into the pics. As you can see here from this distance, it's not quite sharp yet, but from this distance it is, because that's a normal thing. Absolutely, and here as well. And I still have to say, this is absolutely, for this price especially, wonderful front camera. The blur works well, sharpness is there. The bokeh mode works in pretty much all situations, absolutely respectable. I pretty much never had any big issues than sometimes cutting my hair off, which is not a big thing since not much is there, but yeah, results are nice. Also, if you go into a little bit lower light, it's still fine. Now outside, here is one odd thing. This was before the last update, and this is after the update. But even though I have to mention, it's different kind of weather situations. So there was a little bit more light here, and therefore it seems a little bit too saturated and too heavy. This looks way more natural, which is actually something that could happen due to the software update. Things look a little bit more natural now, but otherwise the pixels that you see here are a mix of both. So this is still the old software, looks a little bit more saturated, but nice still, especially here. The sharpness is great, autofocus is very reliable. This is a newer picture with the newer update. Top. For example, this is with AI, this is without. So what AI pretty much does every time, it just boosts the colors, makes it a little more pleasurable. If you like that, just use it all the time. And this, for example, without HDR, with HDR. Here again, without and with HDR. So I really like what Xiaomi or Poco in this case is doing with HDR. I would pretty much just say leave it on all the time. This is AI mode. Like again, it's boosted. But overall, this is a super nice camera, way above what you should expect in this price range. This is on a OnePlus 6 level almost. On a 5T for sure. And for example, low light, okay, that is one thing that people complain about compared to the Mi 8 because it doesn't have OIS. You don't get good low light pictures. But I mean, if you have a steady hand, I think the results speak for themselves. They are absolutely okay, even if not more. Now, this is super low light, pretty much complete darkness without just a street lamp, not all that close. This with the flash, and I would say the flash doesn't work so well because as you can see, it overexposes and flattens the picture. Definitely doesn't look all that appealing, but I'm not gonna really factor this into the score because this is a test that I usually don't do. Now the video, that's pretty much the same that I had in my preview, so nothing has changed here. Still, 4K looks really nice and sharp. There is pretty much no artifacting going on. The autofocus works super well, but as you can see, obviously since we don't have OIS and EIS isn't still working either, yeah, it's a little bit of a nervous, shaky thing, and that's why I would just recommend you to stick with 1080p 60 for now until it gets 4K, maybe even 60, but not quite sure if that will be stabilized because no phone has 4K stabilized with 60 frames. So yeah, if you are okay with losing out a little bit quality, I think you can get something really nice here. Even 1080p looks quite nice. So this is, in general, I would say, pretty much the camera of the Mi 8. Maybe not in low light, but in normal conditions, the selfies look just as good. Also a little bit nervous, but really nice, sharp, with good colors. So I am fully pleased. And also here inside, I have to say the microphone is actually okay. It's usable. It sounds still a little bit thin, but otherwise clear enough, clean. Yep. That's that. And now, before I'm going to kind of a conclusion here, but I want to keep it short, I want to get into a few things that I was asked. And a few extra notes. One is if you use the Swift key delete swipe. That one doesn't work quite as good in some other phones, but it's just a little bit worse. I've seen phones where it's a lot worse, so I almost wouldn't have to mention it, but I still wanted to keep it complete for those people who really rely on that feature. Now the next thing is, does it have FM radio? Yes, it has. The app is installed and it works. Does it support the Camera 2 API? Yes, it does. I didn't try the Google Camera or something like that, but I used an app that can check all those features and it supports everything. The next thing is, what about Netflix HD? I've already talked about it. It doesn't support it now. They are investigating it, but like I said, it's unlikely that it will happen. So everyone who's actually watching on a phone, Netflix in HD, I guess that's a hard pill to swallow. But not, for example, even the Mi 8 has it. So I don't think it's coming, but chances are still there. No notifications icons, like I said, should come in a future update, and that should actually, along with the percentage, make a noticeable difference, at least for me, because then the notch itself never actually bothers me. It's just in this case due to the notch hiding or not enabling to show me the notifications icon and the battery percentage, which is an issue. If I get all those informations, I don't really care about the notch, because in normal use, besides the full screen thing in video, it doesn't bother me. The next thing is no NFC. No, it doesn't have NFC. For everyone who wants to pay contactless, yeah. For me, it's not an issue. Even if I would have contactless payment, which I don't even have, I have no problem just pulling out my card. I don't see what's so much more convenient just pulling out your phone. If it's the phone or the card, just my standpoint. And band 20, yes, it has that. But for everyone in, for example, the US, from what I got, it doesn't support all the important LTE bands. So everyone in Europe should be fine, because band 20 is the important one that gets supported. But in the US, not so much. I'm not quite sure what else I should cover, because I went into all the questions, I went into everything else, and my final conclusion is just this. This phone is available for roughly 300 euros by now, or $300. I'm not quite sure where, depending on where you get it. And I still have to say, if the compromises don't worry, like for example, no NFC, the display that isn't the very best one, but it's totally fine. I never really had an issue with it in using it for a week. And then, for example, the Netflix thing, this is a killer phone. I can't recommend it any more than I could, or like I'm doing already. One colleague, I already recommended it. He bought his. It should already come in a few days. And I have to actually say, using this phone for this week was actually such a great experience, because I had a great speaker all the time. I had a display that was totally fine, never bothered me. It was easier to hold, like for example a OnePlus 5, because even though it's thicker, just because of being narrow, with the great curves, it feels great in the hand. The performance is on an absolute flagship level. And let's not forget that we have like about 20% more battery life than on any other best of the best flagship out there. At least 20%. That's, in my opinion, quite something. The software is absolutely manageable, not maybe my first choice, but at least it's better than MIUI in some cases. The camera is absolutely great. And let's not forget, $300. And even if you pay a little bit more, if you buy it locally somewhere like $350 or so. Now, we have to get into one thing that people have asked me in the comments also as well, even though I personally don't think I need to, but Mi 8, Mi Mix 2S, for example, they said, why should I go for this one if I get for a little bit more the Mi 8? Now, personally, I don't see the huge appeal of the Mi 8. That's why I wasn't all that impressed in that review, because let's just see it what it is. In terms of design, yes, the Mi 8 is better, but the little bit more of the vice that I have in my hand, it has more battery, which I'm okay with the compromise, because everyone always says, I'm okay with a bigger phone if it gets me more battery life. So this is this phone, because it still resembles the Mi 8 in a lot of ways. Now, where it absolutely doesn't is the display. That's the big thing. If the display is super important for you, the Mi 8 definitely crushes it, and this one definitely looks pale comparison. That's that. The sound though is better than on the Mi 8, especially in terms of the speaker. Headphone is the same. Performance is actually a little bit better, because for some reason the Mi 8, when I had it, wasn't fully optimized and had a little bit of fewer startups, but let's say they are on par. The battery life, like I said, is noticeably better by at least 20%. Then we have a software that is marginally better, but that doesn't make a difference. And even the camera, maybe besides low light, is just on par. Now, for all those, like I said, I read the comments, who want a phone without a notch, they have the alternative with the Mi Mix 2S, which is absolutely legit, has a better display like this. Now, in-hand feel is actually better on this one. I have to say, it's easier to hold. I didn't like the not curved back of the Mi Mix 2S so much, but like I said, display is better. The speaker is a tad better, a little bit richer, a little bit louder than the Mi Mix 2S. The performance is on par, battery life is better, software is just a little bit better, and the camera in most situations is at least as good, if not even sometimes slightly better. So that's that. There are alternatives, and people told me, for example, that if you pay like 100 more, which I don't think works out, and get a OnePlus 6, you after all get a way better phone. I don't really see that, because first of all, 100 doesn't work out, because if this one is 300, you usually, I've seen actually the OnePlus 6 for about 400 already. So let's say the difference is 100. Let's take this as the last competitor, as the last alternative. The in-hand feel of the OnePlus is obviously better, but this one isn't really much behind, especially since it feels narrow. The display, pretty much like on the Mi 8, is better on the OnePlus 6 for sure. Then the speaker, noticeably better here, and the headphone output is better as well. Performance, I would actually say, is on par. The battery life is here once again better. Software, no doubt about that. Oxygen kills this software for sure. And the camera, actually, the main cam, I would say is on par. The video cam is better on the OnePlus 6. The selfie cam is actually very close. I kind of actually maybe even prefer that one. The microphone, though, is better on the OnePlus 6. So that's that. I don't think I will make the same thing now also for the 5T, which people have asked for, since you can get it for about the same price, because I think no one really wants to get this one. So I'm not quite sure what else to say. If I didn't cover it and you still have a question left, comments. That's what they are there for. But at least please watch the whole video before you ask them, because I think I've covered as much as I could without making it an hour long. And yeah, if you liked it, thumbs up. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.